Hey, what's up, guys? Cooper and Rupert podcast, doing something a little bit different today. We've decided to review the movie Creed.
Yes, because we're expert movie reviewers.
We're actually not expert movie reviewers, but what we did do is get help from Frank Mengarelli of Podcasting Them Softly, and he is an expert movie reviewer.
Yes. So the warning is there will be spoilers. If you haven't seen it, maybe don't listen to this just yet, but go see it and then listen to this.
Exactly what he said. So on to the interview with Frank Mengarelli.
Hey, Frank, what's going on, man?
Not much. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Thank you for coming on, giving us the time. Talk a little movie stuff. We haven't done any movie stuff before, so I feel like this is a nice kind of segue because we're going to talk about a sports movie. We're going to talk a little Creed. But, I mean, we can kind of combine our worlds, your show, Podcasting Them Softly, and our show together. You know, it's what everybody's been waiting for, obviously.
Yeah, this very well may break the internet. So I really appreciate you guys having me on to talk about Creed. I absolutely loved it. So I'm looking forward to this.
All right, well, let's start there.
We actually haven't...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, we actually haven't talked about Creed yet on our podcast, so I've been looking forward to discussing the film.
Perfect. Well, let's start there. Let's kind of... I mean, maybe you can give us your more expert, professional opinion about what you thought the film... I mean, what you liked about it. What was your takeaway when you saw it?
Well, the thing with Creed is, you know, in the age of cinema now, we're in the unfortunate fad of constantly rebooting franchises, which, I mean, it works for some stuff. A lot of it is tiring, especially when there was a film series that was already completed like 3 years ago, and then there's a new reboot coming out. But that being said, I think what really sets Creed apart is, as opposed to rebooting the Rocky franchise, they chose to immortalize Stallone as Rocky, yet tell the same story with a new character whose father's already immortalized in the Rocky franchise. I mean, I love the Rocky franchise. I think it's fantastic. They jumped the shark a little bit with a few of the films. I mean, Rocky IV, for better or worse, might be my favorite Rocky film. It's certainly not the best one.
It is the best one.
I mean, Rocky ends the Cold War.
Exactly.
I mean, what else do you need?
That's what I always say. He single-handedly brought down communism. So, I mean, let's give the film the credit it deserves.
Right. But, you know, Creed is equal parts a fresh start to a story we've seen before, yet it pays enough homage and keeps the legacy of Rocky alive. It's a very slippery slope that I feel they went upon with this film, and I think it works perfectly. I mean, it couldn't have been any better had they tried.
Okay, so Mikey... Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm pretty much done.
Mikey, you have refused to tell me what you thought of the movie since you've seen it. You've kept it under wraps. So
yeah.
Why don't you? What's your thoughts?
Well, I first want to say that I saw the movie yesterday at a matinee. I was like, we'll go. It'll be a nice cheap price. It was still $14, but the regular price is $15. So I hardly got a deal. But anyways, I liked it. I thought that the movie was great. I completely agree. Fresh. It was surprising. I thought the boxing itself was going to really improve. When he had his first couple of fights, there looked to be some defense. They hugged up a little bit. It looked a little bit more like boxing. And that was one of the things that I hated in the old Rockies. That still kind of towards the end was a problem. And they still were it was just head punches over and over again, which was a little bit ridiculous. And that's
haymakers.
That's the sport part of it that I could never find myself getting over. But I definitely agree. The movie was exceptional. It was very good, and I think it definitely is another solid piece into the Rocky franchise.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me really was that Ryan Coogler, the director, was just that dude can direct movies. I mean, we've seen him. You know, Fruitvale Station was good, but this had like a level of craft and like artistry that I think hadn't been brought to the Rocky movies before, or that franchise at all. It had, you know, a polish, and it felt like it was done by a director that had like a real vision for what he wanted to do. He was like you said, Frank, he was operating in the Rocky universe, but definitely had, a specific eye for the story that he wanted to tell and the way he wanted to tell it. One of the things that really stood out to me was that tracking shot. I know you and Nick love the tracking shots. That first fight that he had, the first professional fight that Creed had, or I guess in this movie it's called Adonis. What did you think about that sequence?
Oh man, that completely blew me away. Just the entire boxing match is in one single take without any fancy camera movements to hide trick edits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was incredible. How the camera would just rotate around Adonis, and then, Rocky would come in every once in a while in the corner of the ring, and then he would disappear, and then he would come back in. I think you nailed it with what you said about Coogler directing this film. For me, the two things that I absolutely love about this is the fact that Coogler and Michael B. Jordan came on to make this. I mean, those guys are quite a pair. Like you said, Fruitvale Station is good. I like that movie a lot. But I think Creed is better. And of course, the other thing is Stallone's return as Rocky in the most realistic way possible. And how Stallone steals the movie, but he takes a back seat.
Yeah,
which I think is also interesting too.
His presence alone in this movie, it was something that I didn't really expect. I mean, I love the franchises too. I watched those growing up as a kid, but seeing him kind of appear for the first time as Rocky in another context was like strangely like really like powerful. I don't know why. Like it kind of gave me goosebumps though, just to see him, because the movie had been so good and so well done up until that point. To see him get this like another at bat as Rocky, but in a movie that you already felt like was going to be good, like really worked for me. And I felt myself like really hyped. I was like, oh, there's Rocky, dude. That guy's a legend. Like acting like he was a real person appearing in some other story that I happened to just be hanging out in.
Yeah, that was a point I brought up in my review that I think is really important about this film is Rocky is no longer the Superman. In this film, he's a real person. He's a real relatable person. And I think what helps is people like you and I, and so many people have grown up watching these films countless times, and this was a fresh look at a old seminal character to a lot of people.
There was a couple things that I particularly appreciated about what they did, because I had no real expectations of what they were going to do here, but I liked Rocky Balboa, and I know that many people, I guess, didn't feel the same way, but I thought that was a really good one. I thought that they did a good job in that movie. I can't remember all the details except for that I walked out of there going, wow, I really liked what they did here. They didn't make it unrealistic and blow it out of proportion. I love that they didn't over-villainize. In Rocky, on all the Rockies, the bad guy is clearly the bad guy. Does really bad stuff, taking steroids, like, he's a robot. It's ridiculous. But in this one, they kept it really realistic. And even when they went to the pre-fight presser, they said all the boring crap that all boxers really say. It really captured reality for me. It was just like they did a really good job with that. I also love the jump cut to PTI with Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser.
Yeah.
Those guys just knocked it out of the park with exactly how they would analyze this story in the sports world.
See, I've heard that Tony Kornheiser has been getting some Oscar buzz.
As he should. Those guys added Max Kellerman as well. That was just completely realistic. Like when they just had those guys in there, they made a perfect universe. Even when people saw, Rocky or like on the street and stuff, it was like it was real. Even when, his girlfriend was like, well, you going to tell me that your uncle is Rocky Balboa? That is like the exact reaction somebody would have if they actually saw Rocky Balboa. I really appreciated that. And I also thought that they didn't overdo the throwbacks to past Rocky movies. I thought it was extremely tasteful. The way that when he turns on YouTube and watches the boxing match, or right when he gets knocked down, and then there's that quick shot of Apollo, when he's doing all those flashbacks right before he gets up.
Yeah.
They didn't overdo it, and I loved the part when they played the Rocky theme right at that moment going into round 12. Just so understated. Loved that part. And just one more thing, when it was... They did this part, I love it when movies do this, where they do something, I think, on purpose, but it's so subtle that it allows you to think that you discovered it and might be the only person who noticed it. But when he turned on the YouTube video and started to, shadow box, he went into Rocky's body on the screen and started fighting his dad.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool little moment that I thought was so... low key that it made it really fun to discover.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that was interesting is that, he was Apollo's son, but he was nothing like Apollo. It was clear that, and that was something that I think Coogler had expressed and that they had talked about. He wasn't going to fight like Apollo because he didn't know Apollo. You know what I mean? He was more like Rocky because he had something to prove. He was somebody who essentially was kind of cast aside and had to get everything himself. I mean, true, he was adopted by, Apollo's wife or widow, but I mean, this was something that he had to do himself. So it made sense that he wasn't going to be anything like his father. And I noticed that as well. And I thought that's a good catch on your part. I mean, I think that was like a critical part of the movie. What did you think, Frank?
Yeah. It was interesting how they did that because I think there is certainly a physical resemblance between Carl Weathers and Michael B. Jordan. And I think that they didn't overdo that. And I agree with what you guys were saying about not overusing the flashbacks. Because, I'll be honest, I was a little nervous going into this film because I love the Rocky franchise. I wasn't crazy about Rocky Balboa.
Shots fired.
I think that Stallone was a little worn out of the Rocky franchise, but it was just a very compelling story, and it was a very sweet story. And I was just, really taken aback by a lot of it. Not to spoil anything for anybody, but the Rocky storyline particularly.
Yeah.
Is just as powerful as Adonis's journey of fulfilling and surpassing his father's legacy, or trying to.
Uh-huh.
Yet at the same time, finding out who he really was as a person, because he, knows nothing about him other than what everybody else knows. There's really no personal attachment he has to him other than he's his son.
Yeah, and I think
that's know him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what this movie did so well is it was in the Rocky template. You know what I mean? It had the exact same formula. Everything worked almost exactly the same as the original Rocky. Only because of the character and because of the essence of who Michael B. Jordan is, simply the fact, that one's an Italian guy from South Philly and one's, a young black kid from LA living in North Philly, which is predominantly black. These kind of culture shifts made everything that we have come to love still feel fresh. Like it was the same movie, but it was totally different. And that's what I think Coogler and Michael B. Jordan did so well is they captured everything. They knew the Rocky movies to a T because they captured everything that was great about them while still being able to tell a totally original story about this guy who it was nothing like Rocky. Really, in some ways. They have that, Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, certainly you nailed it. They're the same person, yet they're completely different. You know, and that's such a fine line to walk.
Exactly. And then, Michael B. Jordan, he's got the Rocky running the stair sequence, but, his is with dudes on ATVs and mini bikes, and it's not, it's not the Rocky theme song. It's the Rocky theme song mixed with this insane Meek Mill song, and he's just out there screaming. That sequence was a perfect encapsulation of, I think, everything that they were trying to do. Exactly the same sequence, but totally different feel and totally different. And I loved it.
Yeah, you know what? That actually might be my favorite part of the film because I loved how throughout the entire film, up until that point, the seminal Rocky theme is ambient in the background,
Yes.
and it lingers from scene to scene to scene until that happens, and it just blows wide open. And he's running in the same gray jumpsuit. This one is just an Air Jordan jumpsuit,
Yeah.
or sweatsuit, I should say. But you're right, with the motorcycles and the ATVs, and he just starts screaming. It's just like, yes, this is a Rocky movie, and I absolutely love it. It's like one of those moments where you put your fist up in the air, like Breakfast Club style, when you're sitting in the theater seeing it.
I just started.
Yeah.
I just started shadowboxing my dad when that happened. We watched, just like you can't help it, but you just start throwing punches at the person next to you.
One thing that I didn't quite expect that I thought was refreshing, and this is when I knew that you loved it, is when the movie was so modern. It was like Stallone had nothing to do with this when it to the making of it. It was just like everything was just so like cutting edge. It just seemed so modern and up to date, and I thought was something that was that I was not expecting. I thought that it might be a throwback. I really didn't have much expectations of what to expect, but the movie was very, very up to date, and I thought that was solid.
Well, and I think by operating in more of like a hip hop culture, for me at least, like that's something I identify with more. It feels a little bit more relevant to who I am.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm basically Michael B. Jordan, is what I'm trying to say.
Pretty much.
We have the same life.
And the same physique.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I did identify with it more. I mean, I think the interesting thing and I heard Ryan Coogler talking about this with on the treatment with Elvis Mitchell, and he was saying how when he was as a young black kid, when he was watching Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, he wasn't identifying with Rocky. He was identifying with Creed, and Creed was the hero of the story. And I think that's an interesting dynamic at play here too, where you see how it could work from both angles. Creed probably, I mean, from what we know about Creed in the movies, he didn't come up from nothing. I mean, he was rich, and he was basically Muhammad Ali, a Muhammad Ali type when the Rocky movies start. But his journey was probably similar, and I think that was the thing that was cool about this one is you kind of see it from a different angle and realize that the friendship that Apollo Creed and Rocky had was built because they were the same people too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, without a doubt, and I can't help but think that this is going to become a franchise. And I would certainly hope so, considering the critical and box office success it's had already, particularly the critical success, as well as I'm 90% confident that Stallone's going to get nominated for an Oscar for this, and he could very well win, which would be amazing. But like the more I think about this, I don't know how you guys feel about it, and I don't know if you've thought about this, but I really hope that either, depending on how many movies they make, there needs to be a boxing match, a film solely dedicated to a baby Creed fighting Drago.
We could do that.
Seriously. Seriously, man. I mean, Dolph Lundgren's still in remarkable shape, and he's still BFF with Stallone.
Yeah.
And I think, it depends on how hard Creed jumps the shark, if it does, because that would be a pretty outlandish thing to do. Yet at the same time, I think it could work if it's done well, and if Coogler's involved in the next couple of films, I think that would be fantastic.
So it would be Dolph Lundgren's son. Is that what you're saying?
No. It's got to be Adonis fighting Drago.
Oh, like an old Drago.
How old is that guy?
Yeah.
How old is Dolph Lundgren?
Dolph Lundgren's like in his 50s. He's like 10 years younger than Stallone and Schwarzenegger and all those guys.
I saw him last at the Rainbow Room with Ron Jeremy, if that means anything.
That means it's probably not going well.
that means I don't know. He's probably up for it.
I
They
think
write
that
him a check. He's in.
I think that means he's probably available, is what it means.
Hey, he was at the red carpet premiere.
Yeah.
And he's going to be in Kindergarten Cop 2 and Expendables 4, so I think it'd be a good move for him. But you guys wouldn't want to see that in a way? You wouldn't want to see like Adonis fight the guy that killed his dad?
I want to see that. I won't lie. I don't know if you could pull it off in the world that they've created, because it feels so real, and that feels so like wish fulfillment, like some sort of like, I don't know.
They could cameo him in there somewhere along the line. I think that could be funny, like having some sort of like a bar scene, where Dolph Lundgren walks in and maybe they don't know, like maybe, they don't know each other, but they have a conversation.
I'm
that
sure
would be
he knows.
really
I'm sure he knows who killed his dad.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good point. Yeah.
Unless they take the route of Drago training a Russian boxer that Adonis has to fight.
Ooh, that's good too. What? Mikey, in that bar scene that you're proposing, what would be funny about Creed meeting the guy who killed his father?
What wouldn't be funny?
I want to hear this too.
It would just be ironic. It would just be it would be something where we would know something that the characters don't, or at least Drago wouldn't know it, anyways.
But he'd have to know it now.
Drago's just hanging out in a Philadelphia bar.
Yeah, him and Ron Jeremy walk in, and then they have, and then there's hilarity ensues.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Like, who do we want to see? I mean, that's, I guess, your number one choice, Frank, but like, what kind of villain will we want to see Creed fight in the next movie? Because I got the impression that it's going to be the guy who knocks him out when he's at Duke's son's gym. Remember the first time?
Do you think that there's going to be another one?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure I thought this might have been the end of it.
Because remember
No way.
No. This is done so well financially, and it's done so well critically. I mean, it's been on a lot of, like, Frank, it's been on a lot of top 10 lists already, right? Top 10?
I mean, it's on my top 10 list thus far.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still a handful of movies I have to see, but I mean, I was completely blown away by it. So, I mean, I can't imagine they're not going to at least make, two more, because everything gets a trilogy.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, I mean...
I don't know, man. I suppose he could fight the guy from Duke's son's gym, but I'm sticking with the Drago thing.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, he's going to need a new problem. They can't just do the exact same movie again. Something's going to have to come up. He's going to have to overcome something personally as well. Like, they can't just make he's now a professional boxer, go fight somebody. There's got to be some sort of adversity.
Unless they just follow the Rocky 2 template.
Just a rematch of that guy? Yeah.
Rematch of that guy and he beats him?
I think that would be the least thing I would want to see. Because as much as I liked this movie, I think the one thing that didn't, and I think it was good because it made it all about Adonis.
Yes.
But the villain wasn't the best. He was okay.
I liked that it was understated and clean like that.
I agree, but I think for the next one, you can go a little bit bigger and somebody who's a little bit more obnoxious.
You're going to have to.
What about this? What if Creed had a legitimate son that's also a boxer? Could that be a thing?
Yeah, but wouldn't you already know about him?
Yeah, that's a good point. He would probably live with his mom, or they would have met each other by now, probably. So that's probably out of question.
I'm trying to think, because Stallone's son in the film isn't a boxer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they would do. Honestly, I'm sure it would be good. I would hope it would be good, especially if Coogler comes back, which I'm, pretty sure he would. I think he's signed on to direct a Black Panther film for Marvel, but I don't know what else he has going on.
Yeah.
I would imagine they're going to develop a Creed 2 shortly.
That seems imminent.
Where do we rank this?
That's the question.
That's the one that I think I've been thinking about the most, is where does this go in the Rocky franchise?
Frank?
I mean, all right. I kind of have things broken down into like two lists, like my favorite and then like the actual best.
Okay.
So if I'm going to go with like the list of like the actual best films of the Rocky franchise, this would probably be number 2.
Okay.
It would be behind the original Rocky.
I would probably agree with that. I would say, yeah, like I said, 4 is my favorite. It's just the most fun to watch. But I would have a hard time convincing myself that that's probably the best movie. I think I would put it a close second to Rocky, which I think is saying something, considering that picture. I mean, for all the franchises that came out of it, and we don't really associate, franchises coming out of Best Pictures, that movie did win the Best Picture. So I think that's saying quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, and what else is interesting? I didn't know this till I read it, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but Stallone is the same age as Burgess Meredith was in the first Rocky movie.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of crazy, right?
It's perfect, yeah. I mean, I will say this, he looks a little bit like he's in better shape than Burgess Meredith.
He's had a little work done.
Yeah.
But
I think he's done a few more
push-ups.
push-ups.
I will say though, speaking of how Stallone looked in this film, my problem with Rocky Balboa and to a certain extent Rambo was that Stallone's had a lot of work done.
Yeah.
Over the years, and in Rocky Balboa, to me, he didn't look like how Rocky should look. He just looked too polished and too good.
Mm-hmm.
But for this film, he certainly changed his physique as the film went on.
Yeah.
Which was really impressive. And I will say, when Rocky's first introduced into the film, he's pretty buff, and I thought to myself in the theater, it's like, wow, would Rocky still be in that great a shape?
Well, I think, to me it does. I get what you're saying, because I think in Rocky Balboa he had, like, you're right. It was more about his face and his, like, the way he carried himself. He seemed more embattled, and he seemed, he was kind of more shuffling around, and life seemed harder for him. And I think, he did look like he was in good shape, but I think they did a good job of making him seem weathered and kind of like lived in, as opposed to the way he looked in the kind of the sheen of Rocky Balboa.
Oh, certainly. I can't say enough about Stallone. I think Stallone's probably one of the smartest, if not smartest people in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. I know the guy catches a lot of flack, but this guy's got 3 franchises under his belt that are still going, and he's been able to reinvent himself numerous times since the 70s. And the guy's brilliant. I know that he didn't do as much work with Creed, but I know he did work on the script, even though the Writers Guild didn't credit him. But it's very impressive what he's been able to do for so long.
Yeah, totally. I think
I
think because of the nature of the films that he does, people don't really see it that way. But he created 2 of the franchises that he's in. So I think that's more than most people can say.
Yeah, certainly.
I got this one.
Certainly.
I'm just going to run through my 5 or my 7 now that I think about it. Okay. I got 1, Creed, 2,
wow,
Rocky Balboa, 4, 3, 5.
Okay. So Rocky is 1.
Yep.
Creed 2.
Yep.
Rocky Balboa 3?
No, Rocky 2, 3.
Oh, okay.
Rocky Balboa 4, Rocky 4,
5.
Rocky 3, 6, Rocky 5, 7.
Okay, the most confusing way to possibly do a list.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly, as hard as it possibly can be.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that is a good encapsulation. I think we kind of got to everything that I wanted to say about this movie. Basically, I think we're all in agreement that we loved it. Mike, Frank, you guys got anything else you want to say?
If you listen to this podcast and haven't watched the movie, that's probably was a really bad idea. But you should. But you need to go right now.
We'll do the spoilers thing beforehand.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Mike just said. So.
All right, well, Frank,
I think that's it. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it, and we might have to get you guys back on for
Concussion.
For Concussion. I know you're dying to see that one, probably, but we might have to.
We'd love to. We spoke to the cinematographer very early on.
Oh, for that movie?
And Ron Howard's cinematographer, Salvatore Totino. The guy also shot Any Given Sunday, too.
Oh, wow.
Which is cool. So, yeah, very much looking forward to that. And, yeah, thank you very much for having me on anytime.
All right, thanks, Frank. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah,
no problem.
Talk again. There he goes, Frank Mengarelli.
Yes. You know what I learned?
What did you learn?
I learned that boxing is still the best sport. It's still, this movie, here's the thing. Knowing what we know now, it's hard to enjoy boxing because we know what it does to the people who do it. The concussions, the CTE stuff, the brain damage, just the effect it has on the people who participate in the sport. But from a cinematic standpoint and just from a sport in general, there is nothing, I think, more pure than boxing. You're going in there is one guy to beat, there is no one to help you. You have people in your corner, but there is no one there to help you. You don't have a teammate, you can't take plays off, and you just got to go beat the other guy up.
Yes.
Like that's
it's the best for movies too. When I walked out of that movie, one of the things that I was thinking about is how good boxing fits in cinema. It fits better than football or basketball or any of the other sports, any other team sports. Even though I like to watch those more than I like to watch boxing, that just captures everything. It captures the fight. It allows all the different plots that you've put in the movie to come out at that one exact moment. Because you're, like you said, the boxer is in control. They can do everything or nothing, and it's all them, and they're out there completely alone. And that is something that I think this is just why this movie works so well, along with everything else that went right in this movie. Boxing is just the absolute perfect outlet for it.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's the perfect metaphor for life. You know what I mean? It just is. It's like life is a fight, and then you get to have an actual fight, which is not only looks great, on screen and is exciting to watch, but it's just, like you said, it encapsulates everything that the person has gone through up until that point in one moment.
Yeah, and it's just so easily digestible, which I think is what we need. Because people don't want to go to a movie and get into the minutia that you and I do on this podcast when they're watching a football movie, which is exactly where I go, which is why I have such a problem with movies like Remember the Titans or
you get upset
Friday Night Lights or something like that because their uniforms are out of date. I just get upset about stuff like that. Boxing allows me to
just relax.
To just relax a little bit because I know those headshots over and over. Those bugged me, but at the same time, I told myself when I was watching the movie, it was just, there's people who don't know anything about boxing that are watching this movie, and let's just enjoy ourselves a little bit here at the theater. We don't have to spend the whole time watching Floyd Mayweather Pacquiao, where it's just defense for 12 rounds.
Not exactly quite as fun as the actual Mayweather Pacquiao taught us.
It's just rock'em sock'em robots just punching each other in the face till one of their heads pops off.
Yeah. I don't think anybody died, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
No, but it needed to be.
Yeah.
It needed to be a little bit more subdued, but at the same time, I allowed the repeated head trauma to go.
But I get what you're saying. Yeah. It's like in poker movies where one guy's like, I have four aces, and he's like, well, you know what? I have a straight flush, and it's like the best hands ever that would never beat each other. Like, yeah, you don't want it to be like that, but at the same time, I think this movie did the best job of making it the most real, and we talked about that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and especially his first fight in Tijuana. I remember I was blown away by how realistic the fight. I mean, he knocked him out so quickly, but he did it like somebody who was far superior to the talent would do it.
Yeah, plus because you see a lot of boxing in Tijuana, you know what that's like.
Yes, I actually frequent that. When I'm not here, I'm actually there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that was a fun experiment, and I think maybe we'll try to do some stuff like that again. But
quick, how many stars is it? What's the typical maximum stars you can get? 4?
Yeah, or 5. Some people do 5, I think.
What would you do on a 4-star scale for this movie?
I would give it I wouldn't say it's 4 stars in the sense that it's perfect.
Yeah.
But I think as far as sports movies goes, it's definitely a 4-star. It's one of the best sports movies.
Well, just quick, right before we go, this is another point that just popped into my head. I absolutely loved the part where he got the trunks right before the fight.
Yes.
They put in the old Rocky into the movie so tasteful. Yes. I love that. And the parts where...
And the fact that it said Creed and Johnson.
Yeah, they were new. I don't know if they were new shorts or if she just had the back embroidered. I don't know what the situation was, but I loved those. Like, he got the trunks and he wore them. I was all on him being his own guy, but when he was just going out there and, wearing the shorts, I thought that was so tight.
Did you tear up at this movie at all? Did it get a little dusty for Mikey?
No, that's just normally not my style, but I can definitely tell you I was into the movie. I definitely felt it.
I had to actively try not to embarrass myself when he said, to prove I'm not a mistake. That touched me deeply.
Yeah, movie. It was good, man. I definitely felt I was feeling for the characters.
My allergies kicked in when that started. Let's put it that way.
Oh man, it was really good, and it was kind of unexpected. But now obviously the people that we're talking to now have already seen the movie.
Yes,
and if you haven't, then we completely ruined it for you. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
No, I think that's the end for us.
I thought that was it.
Yeah, we'll see you guys on Monday when we are more in our wheelhouse.
Yes.